So y'all bear with me.
See? What are we talking about?
Well, the New York mayor has been
Drill rappers meet with New York City mayor.
yes, because the New York City mayor, I'm gonna get his name.
So what do you think about this? What do you think about the drill rappers that are meeting with them? Do you think that they're going to have a good business meeting?
I think they will. Will it translate into helping with all the stuff that's going on? I don't believe that.
Like what type of stuff?
All these rappers out here shooting and killing themselves before the age of like 23. But Mano, after he came out and was basically, just dragging drill rappers and the concept of drill and all the violence that it leads to, Mano set up a meeting with, some of the drill rappers, and they all sat and talked to him and kind of explained where they come from an artistic standpoint. And from what I read, he left with an understanding, but he still was looking for, accountability from the artists and from the rappers. I think the meeting is a dope idea, but it's just my personal opinion. I don't know if it's going to change the rate that we're seeing, the stuff that we're seeing as it relates to these young rappers. I don't know if y'all agree. Jay Moore, I'll come to you first. What do you think, man? How powerful is this meeting? I think it's a dope concept, dope idea. Shout out to Mano.
Yeah, I don't think this meeting with the mayor, Mano, or anybody else is going to help as long as the systemic problems are there. The problems are with lack of opportunities within the workspace, poorly funded schools, the fact that everything is way more expensive now and people still got to find a way to eat.
They should be drilling the mayor, not the other way around.
Yeah, like that. Why are you on these rappers? These kids are just trying to make a way out of no way. And, I don't ever blame 20-year-olds for 50-year-old and 100-year-old problems. And that's where we're at right now. We think, okay, we'll sit down and talk to these rappers and maybe they won't make this violent music. If this violent music is how I am somehow able to feed myself, my mother, and if I got a kid, maybe I'm able to feed him too, then you can't tell me nothing about what I'm doing is wrong. I got to eat. Especially
when the music is a product of the environment.
Yeah, it's a product of the fact that we have left these. We always act like it's these kids are just wild for being to be wild. That's why I feel like when we talk about we've talked about like C. Dolores Tucker before. Like I can't act like these aren't my children, even though I don't have children of my own. Me being almost 45 years old, and I see some of the things they're doing. Somewhere I feel like, somewhere we didn't speak to these kids the way we should have spoke to them. We were always, once we got to a certain point, we were looking down on them. I'm not sure if you saw like a statement that RZA put out. He was like, he said something to like, oh, it's just thuggery and violence in the music. And as much as I love the RZA and Wu-Tang, like, what do you think a lot of your music was about?
I mean, you had a horrorcore group.
Now you're knocking on 50 years old if RZA's not already 50, and now you're looking down at the like I said, you can't look at these youngsters like they're not your kids. I would rather hear what they have to say than to go in there and me to point my finger and tell them you need to stop this, because clearly the problem is something that has a lot more to do with how we've treated them and how we've raised them than just they're just doing it to be wild.
Lone, you said something that caught my attention. You said it's the opposite. They need to be kind of expand on what you said as it relates to them need to be speaking to the mayor.
Jay touched on most of it, really. I mean, what Jay is saying is what I absolutely agree with. You can't get mad at the product of, they are the product of the system and the machine that cranks them out like that.
Right.
Or any type of thing. Like when we talk about, like, this type of conversation is political. It is very much like let me gather my thoughts here, because this could go so many different ways. But to kind of what Jay was saying, I have a hard time putting any type of blame on violence or anything like that manner on an artist of influencing other people when they are already being influenced in their entire life by and being thrust upon something just for existing. And that goes for us too. Everything that we do, if stuff is hard, then we react however we react, and we've had certain privileges of growing up in certain eras in different places that may have been better than other places based upon all these systemic issues. You know what I mean? And everything. And so I don't know. I'm not out here trying to advocate for violence or anything like that. But that's not even the conversation to me. You know, like I feel like we can't talk about any of that until like it's. We need to talk about the state sanctioned, state funded violence way before we talk about all this other stuff.
Like you have,
like we're not there.
Yeah, you have underfunded schools. You got closed libraries. You take away, pre-K, and then you wonder why. Okay, this kid's 13 and now he's in the street. It's like you provided no resources for him, but all of a sudden you look up and it was like, well, why do the police in New York basically have an unlimited blank check of a budget? You know, and wherever you got to cut corners, you'd be like, all right, well, we got to close this school. We got to shut down this particular thing. But, you know, the police are given an unlimited budget. And this isn't just a New York problem. Right. It's everywhere in the United States when you look at it, because whenever there's a lawsuit against the police.
The inner city.
Yeah, everywhere, you know, because whenever the police do something wrong, you know, where do you, and they get sued and they lose, where do you think the money comes from? Yep. That means the library's got to close. That means, you know, teachers have to buy their own school supplies because this, you know, the city and the state can't provide those resources. So no one wants to talk about that, you know, because when everybody talked about, defund the police, and that was such a controversial thing, you know, having many family members who are in education and friends as well, you know, they have been consistently over the last 25 to 30 years been defunding public education from the college to pre-K levels. And no one's, you know, you can't get anybody to be upset about that, you know. So like I said, if anything, these youngsters need to go in and talk to the mayor and be like, what are you going to do to stop the violence? Don't come and talk to me.
Jump in there, Terry.
For starters, how can you ban something that you don't control?
You can't.
You can't ban it because, I mean, you can go make music and put it out and it can go wherever you want it to go. It doesn't have to be controlled right or represented right in New York City. A lot of times what these politicians do is more of trying to point blame at something else. So they can't figure out how to change things. So it goes back to how we brought up hip hop the last episode, how everything is blamed on hip hop. Anything that has to do with hip hop or any city or anything that your environment created, now it's that problem. That's the whole reason why this is going on. No, it starts where, like Jay Moore said, the schools closing, libraries, things like that. It starts in the home. If you've split up these homes, these kids don't have fathers in the house, and they're pretty much being raised in the neighborhood, essentially. So I mean, they're products of their environment, and not to say that the message is dope or whatever. I mean, I don't mess with drill. I don't like drill personally. Right. But at the end of the day, regardless of whatever kind of music it is, it's still brought up under the cultural umbrella that's hip hop, which is about explaining and telling stories about where you're from and what happened and things of that nature. And this is not to condone any violence on anybody, but you can't be the mayor of a city and blame your problems on people making drill music. Chicago has the same issues as far as drill music is concerned, because I mean, that's where it's from. That's where drill music was originated, but still
the violence was there before.
Exactly.
Talk to them.
Violence has always been in both of these states.
Yeah.
They were in the states before hip hop even existed.
And hip hop's always been reflective. Like,
it's always a reflection of what's going on outside.
Yeah, it's always been there.
Literally telling you stories of things that are really going on. These are not fairy tales.
And you know what? This is the crazy thing, because nobody likes to actually look at statistics and pay attention to numbers. Like, okay, violence and crime is up over the last couple years, but if you look at what it was 25, even 30 years ago in the 90s, it was way higher then. Yeah. Violence, and especially in New York, and murder, and New
York was the murder capital.
All the statistical categories that measure crime in the United States of America are down and have been in steady decline for about 30 years now. Yeah. But it's just that, like, now we got 24-hour news. We got the, you know, social media to make it seem like everything is way worse than what it is.
Everybody has an opinion.
You know, everybody didn't have an opportunity to speak on this, but you know, everybody does have the opportunity to actually go look at the numbers and see what it actually looks like. Now, as someone who has unfortunately had lost people to violent crime, like, you know, when I say the numbers are down, that doesn't really, it only gives me so much of where it makes me feel better, because I have a couple of friends who aren't here because of people going out here and wilding and shooting people for no good reason.
Right.
You know, so I understand on the other end where people think we have to do something right now, especially if you've been a victim or you have been close to a victim of crime. But we have to be also real about the actual causes of crime and not just be
reactionary
to
the problem is,
crime
and it's the same thing with what goes on in America when anything happens, like a police or somebody kills somebody or does something they're not supposed to do. You only care when it happens at that point in time. When it's fresh, you care about it, and then let a little bit of time go by, like a month or two, then everybody forgets about it. Then we repeat the same cycle. And that's what's pretty much going on. When you can't figure out how to fix these problems, you want to keep pointing and blaming things that don't have anything. Well, I mean, I will say it does contribute, just because it is a message that's telling you about what's going on. But at the end of the day, it's not the fault of these rappers for telling these stories.
Because what you're saying, one of the reasons why we move on from the situation, if you will, is because you can only deal with trauma for so long.
Yeah.
Right. And if we're not going to actually address any of the systemic issues that will prevent it, then what are we doing? You know what I mean?
I think it's very irresponsible to just cast that out there and say it's the drill rappers. Just put it all on the drill rappers. I don't like how that looks.
But this has been going on for decades, like years. I mean, Trump did it with the
Central Park
5. You know, this goes back to the United States' deep-rooted racism problem, right? And built, you know, how it's built into everything. You know, you mentioned like the defund the police. Look, if we actually addressed racism within the system of policing, then there wouldn't be lawsuits. And then what happens? Then taxpayers don't get that money drawn from it. So it seems like it would make sense to maybe address the racism in policing.
You know, if you're an actual fiscal conservative,
why aren't you
should want to address racism in a systemic way in policing. That you should have. You know, when I saw a statistic, it said like the city of Chicago has paid out somewhere in the manner of $300 million in the past decade in wrongful death and excessive force lawsuits. Like, if I'm someone who calls myself a conservative, and my conservatism, I know I messed that word up, is built around.
We felt that.
Is built around fiscal responsibility. I should definitely want all this to be addressed to the point where it doesn't happen anymore. But no one wants to have that conversation because, you know, somewhere along the line, you feel like police brutality here and there keeps you a little bit safer in your neighborhood.
Also,
so you don't
some
mind
of your friends' pockets lined, because I mean, we already know about the prison system. So
talk to them.
And it starts early with kids too. I mean, you're literally with kids, the same kids that we're talking about that's doing this drill rap stuff. As soon as they do one little thing in school, what do they do to them? They suspend them,
expelled,
or they send them to juvenile. It's like they're trying to put them into the system.
I mean, we talked about the classroom to prison pipeline.
Yeah.
This is all well documented.
So if you're doing this to people, imagine the effect that has on people.
Yeah.
So.
And then even go further in how we have no type of rehabilitation for people that are in prison to get out.
Right.
Prison is nothing more than grad school.
Good point, Long.
Yeah.
It's all what George Carlin says. It's all messed up and it's all bad for you.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I censored it, but
yeah, I see what you did there.